Welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video, and I'm afraid I'm doing another video response, so sorry, I know you must be getting tired of looking at my crazy mug on camera all the time. However, this is a video response to a question just posed on Sunday by PC Baker, and I just mentioned him in my, am I too small of a channel to do shoutouts video, so when he posed a question to the community, I thought, I gotta give him a video response, so I'm doing so. So PC Baker had, on his Sunday Stroll, a little discussion about retro games, why they're so popular these days, is it nostalgia, etc. But the reason he wants to ask that question, and sort of the title of it is, how much retro is too much retro? And the reason for that he's aiming at is there is a game coming out, just announced at the Tokyo Game Show. I'll put all the details, his video is down below, the link, and you'll see exactly what all the discussion is about. But there is a game coming out called Back in 1995, which is echoing the graphic style of the PlayStation 1. And PC Baker's asking, like, that's not exactly the most aesthetically pleasing part of gaming history. Why are we going there? Is there such a thing as being too retro? So that's his question. First of all, I think the reason why retro games in general are so popular these days is, in my opinion, it's for two basic reasons. I mean, PC Baker brings up some good points. It's nostalgia, or it reminds you of a friend you used to play with, or you enjoy this type of game and you can't get it anymore, whatever. I think retro video games have become really popular lately for two main reasons. Number one, everybody's getting fatigued by the constant need for updating, whether it's updating the software. I mean, here's this game that just came out and it's broken and you have to patch it. Or the entire operating system has to be updated on a pretty regular basis. I mean, I was surprised when I heard the Wii U and I think Xbox One, I can't remember, both needed a day one patch before it would even operate. Or I know the Wii U wouldn't play Wii games if you didn't do this day one patch. It's like, people are really getting tired of, like, what happened to the old days of I put the game into the machine and I turn it on and I play it. I think people are getting fed up with how the current industry standards are just like, you know what, we'll fix it all with a patch. It's fine. You can just patch it. And not only just patching, but also like DLC, selling me stuff that I already have bought on the disc. Gears of War did that recently. Street Fighter Cross Tekken did that recently. The stuff that they sold you later on DLC existed on the disc. People tore apart the code and they found it. People are getting fed up with that. You know, again, why not like the old days? I put the game in and it just starts working. That's what we want. So I think fatigue is, and also, why do I have to buy a new console every year? Or if not a console, like, I think Apple's not helping the situation with another version of its hardware every year. And that seems to be becoming the norm. I think a lot of people are just tired of that. So let's get into Super NES or Atari or what have you, the TurboGrafx, because I can just play it and it still plays the same games it always played since it was new. That's my that's my first reason I think retro video games are becoming so popular. Second reason, and this one I can totally comment to myself, the games really stand up. I mean, they really stand the test of time. About 20 years ago, I really dabbled deeply into MAME. I think it was the first time I had finally figured out how to get it all working, and I was playing all the old classic coin-op games. And I remember thinking to myself, my gaming PC of the time, I had StarCraft, I think, or Warcraft at least, Jedi Knight, Civilization. I had great games. And I was sitting there playing Space Invaders and Asteroids and Pac-Man and Donkey Kong. These games are just good. Like, they really stand up even decades later. So I think, you know, they're just really good games. That's the other reason that people like them. There are very good games that are made today as well, don't get me wrong. Now, to answer PC Baker's question about this upcoming Back in 1995 game, and doesn't it look horrendous, and is that going too retro with the, you know, jarringly low polygon, low detail PlayStation 1 era looking video graphics. I kind of agree, because ironically, at the time that, or over the weekend, I've been filming a PlayStation 1 review that's going to be going up pretty soon. And I'm still in the editing process of it. And I even say in one of the things that I'm commenting on this game, it's a bit of an eyesore. It's like, well, there you go. There's the proof. Those PlayStation 1 graphics are pretty hard on the eyes. But I think we have to remember that we're talking about groundbreaking stuff here. I mean, when the PlayStation 1 came out, there weren't too many other consoles doing 3D at that time. You know, you had the N64 and the Jaguar as well, and they were all very painful by today's standards. But we were talking about a time when it hadn't been done yet. So there was a podcast I was listening to that actually had a very detailed discussion about the PlayStation 1, what Sony was going for. They wanted as smooth a frame rate as possible. So they made a lot of cuts in... they went into the detail, and I can't remember, but it talked about like anti-aliasing and bit mapping and ray tracing and all this kind of stuff, about how they cut as many corners on the look of things as they could to make sure that it ran smoothly. And as a result, yes, you get amazingly smooth games for the PlayStation 1. They run fantastically. They don't look great, but they run very smooth. And that was what Sony was zeroing in on. The Sega Saturn doesn't run quite so smooth. It's a different bit of architecture. And its 2D games look fantastic. But, you know, I think we got to remember we're talking about sort of exploring new territory. And there's two other consoles that I often think about when people complain, you know, oh, early 3D polygon era, that was pretty painful to look at. It's like, yeah, but let's also look at the Vectrex pretty critically. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Vectrex, as you all know, because you've seen a few of my videos. And for somebody who played vector games back in the arcade era, to turn on that Vectrex and to see that magical glow and to see whatever game, it just... nothing can compare. I love the Vectrex. But I've posted a video about how Asteroids doesn't play properly on it. You can't play Battlezone on it. I don't think Red Baron would work on it. A lot of the things that Tempest is possible, but it's super slow and choppy and not very... like, the poor Vectrex, I'm sure in its time it was quite a powerful home console machine, but it's got limitations. You know, it was trying something, and I applaud it, and I love it to death, but it's got its limitations. It's not a powerhouse machine, and the games that you can play on it are pretty basic. That's just the way it is. The other machine that I think you can also level the scrutiny at is the original Game Boy. Nintendo were just thinking, okay, we want this thing to last. It can't die after 2 hours on a battery charge, or with fresh batteries in it. So we want to make sure it's the most energy efficient machine we can possibly do. And we want it to be something kids can get for their birthday or whatever. So it's got to be cheap. So we will buy, or we will invest in, or we will design the crummiest, most glaringly bad to the eye LCD screen we can get our hands on. And that's what you ended up with. And anybody who's looked at an original Game Boy screen, the ghosting and the differentiation between the shapes is so terrible. Yet, you know, the Game Boy and the Vectrex are beloved by their fan base. And the PlayStation as well. It also has its following. So I think it's a little unfair to point fingers at this back in 1995 game and go, oh, why do you want to bring that back? It's like, well, you know what? It was a chapter in video game history, and sure, it deserves as much recognition as all the 16-bit games, the Shovel Knights of this world that are out there, the Spelunkys, the Super Meat Boys. You know, hey, let's get a game that echoes that other period. And I mean, there's even stuff for there's modern iOS games that look a lot like Atari 2600 games. And they look great. I love them too. So you know what? Yeah, sure. Get a 1990s PlayStation looking game out there. Why not? In conclusion, what would I say to PC Baker's question? How much is too much retro? I guess it's sort of up to the individual. Like, it's whatever your personal tastes are. I honestly, you say retro to me, and I know that's a word that it has a lot of connotations that are negative. Alan Stewart, Mainmeister, he hates using the word retro, and I kind of see his point. I don't mind the word myself, but I do find it's becoming like a flag that is being carried around by groups as defining a thing, a theme. And a recent example, actually, and this is almost deserving of its own video, but the Retro VGS, which is a new console that's coming out, which is supposedly retro inspired. You can put cartridges in it. It'll have modern design games like, say, the Shovel Knights and the Super Meat Boys, but it comes on a cartridge and you put it into your Retro VGS console. It's a nice idea, but it's coming at a price tag that is not retro. It's got a lot of functionality, like it uses USB connectors and stuff, so it's like, well, that's not very retro. So, and yet right on the front of the console, it's got retro in big white letters. The Retro VGS. It's not very retro. And the Retron 5 came out last year or 2 years ago. Sure, it's designed to play all of your old cartridges, but it's a modern machine, so why has it got retro in its name? I don't know. Maybe this is getting away from me, this video response, but for me, how much retro is too much retro? I don't think you can have it. I don't think there is too much when it comes to actual games. If there are games that are coming out that have a retro style, I'm perfectly fine with it. I don't care what style it is. I have played games that are like Pong and are fantastic. I've played games that are like Pitfall and are fantastic. And they are modern games. I did a video about Fix-It Felix, which was done in a retro style. Not a problem. So the 1990s PlayStation era graphics, go for it. That is not too much retro to me. I do have a problem with sticking the word retro on something like a console that comes at a price tag of $300. But that's for another time. Okay, this video response is getting way too long, so I'm going to sign off now. And there you go, PC Baker. I hope you enjoyed that. Until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.